we will begin with part one of dreams. B'ezrat Hashem, hopefully we'll be able to accomplish this in about 3 or 4 classes. That's the goal. And the idea is also why is there so many classes is when I was putting together this class, there was a few ways for me to actually go about doing this. Either I could have done it and given you one class and sort of given you a brief overview and basically go through every little bit and pieces to it and gave you a little brief overview on the entire dream topic. But then you wouldn't have gained much information from it. So my goal is to go in a very systematic fashion that by the time, if you're following through all the four classes, B'ezrat Hashem, you will have a very, very strong understanding on dreams. You'll understand which dreams are real, what dreams are fake, what science says about dreams versus what the Torah says about dreams, what do certain dream interpretations mean, what happens when you get nightmares, what happens if you don't have dreams, what happens when sleep. So there's going to be a lot of information in these classes. So if there's something that you don't understand, please feel free to stop me, and I'll try to explain it in more detail. So the first part, the way that I usually like presenting information, especially like these types of topics, is to see what science says about dreams, right? But before we begin with science, I want to tell you interesting dream story that about a story that happened, a true story that happened in the Holocaust. So this story was about 2 children by the name of Esther and Yidel. They were orphaned when the Nazis broke into their home and basically with 2 bullets orphaned both from their parents. The mother and the father each got a bullet to the head in front of the children's eyes, and that was not an uncommon scene back in in the Holocaust. And they were both taken into a concentration camp. Somehow, miraculously, they were able to stick together. They stood together for 2 years. Right? He was in the same camps. They were one was in the boy section, one was in the female section. And after 2 years, there was suddenly the woman's side woke up with lots of shouting and screaming and gunshots and dogs barking, and everybody was woken up. The commotion, like, what's going on? And one of the people that were in the camps for quite a while said, it must be someone tried to escape. And they said, oh, well, and she was this older woman that was in the concentration camp for a long time. She said, like all these people, she says, what are they thinking? There is, the fences are all, electrocuted. They're all, and they have towers, and they have guards, and they have dogs. How can you escape? You can't escape these things. And the next day they found out, let me just remind me, I'm sorry to interrupt the story. We're learning Sabina Bina Bat Miravari. Okay, so so what happened is the next day there was another gentleman that came over to Esther, and she said, I'm very sorry to tell you this, but your brother was one of those that escaped, and no one made it back. And and she this was her last straw of her family ties. And she took it really hard. But at the end, she kept on saying to herself, her mantra was, it's better that he got a bullet in the back than dying in the gas chamber. At least he got it better that way. And she pushed through. Shortly afterwards, she got...
Halachically better to die that way?
Halachically, it's better not to die.
I know, but you just...
No, I'm saying, yeah. So first of all, your question goes into a long way, especially nowadays when people, let's say, are in life support, or can they sign a do not resuscitate, do not intubate, right? A DNR, DNI.
You're allowed to do that?
So under certain halachic parameters, you are, but you have to speak to a competent Orthodox halachic rabbi, right? That's familiar with these situations, right? And generally, you're not allowed to cut short your life, but there are always different criteria and scenarios that come into play. So going back to our story, she was, shortly afterwards, she was taken to a death camp known as Sobibor, if I'm pronouncing it right, somewhere in Poland. And this was known as a death camp. People went there to die, and that was it. There was no people surviving it. The day that she came, it was with 800 Jewish prisoners arrived in the same day that she came. Only 7 was still alive the next day. Luckily, she was one of those 7. And what happened was that sometimes the Nazis needed, they needed some services from the Jews. So if, let's say, a Jew was a craftsman or a dentist or whatever it was, they used his service. Okay, you're not going to die because we need you for today. So when they were killing everybody in this death camp, they asked who knows how to knit, and she happened to know how to knit. So she survived for now because of that. And while they were, the prisoners or the Jews who were there in their bunks, they were like, listen, we have to escape. We're not going to survive over here. Our only choice out of here is to escape. So there were, and on that night was was the birth of the first and probably the most successful escape from a Nazi concentration camp in the concentration camp history. So they what happened was that the next day, right before they had a whole planned escape route, and the next night, right before they were supposed to escape the next morning, she falls asleep. She falls asleep and she has a dream, and in her dream, her mother comes to her in a dream. And she goes to her mother and she's like, Mom, do you know that we're planning on escaping tomorrow? And she's like, I know, my darling, I know. And I'm coming to tell you that you'll survive. And I want to tell you where you should go. And she goes and she sort of floats together with her mother. She's the one who tells over the story. She floats together with her mother, and they float outside that closure, and they float into the country, into the marshland, and then they float into like this faraway place where there's a barn. And she points to a haystack and says, "This is where you're going to go to be saved." And then she wakes up. And she wakes up, she starts getting very emotional. It's the first time her mother came to her in a dream. And she tells her bunkmate, this is what happened. That, must be something's going on over here. And she was like, it's a dream, it's nothing. You're just nervous. You're escaping tomorrow. You have a lot on your mind. It's nothing. So she took it to heart, and she's like, no, it can't be. It has to mean something. And she went, and the next day they escaped, right? And it was October 14, 1943, of the greatest escape in the concentration camp history, as far as I know, that when they all got together, there was a group of like partitions of people, the Jews that were fighting against the Germans, and they were all in the forest and things like that, and places of hiding. And she goes, and they all got up together, and she decides, she's like, listen, I can't go with you guys, I have to go somewhere else. And they were like, hey, you're not going to survive by yourself. And she's like, no, my mother came to me in a dream, I have to go to this place. And they said fine. They bid her farewell, and she went on her way. For 5 nights and 5 days she walked. And she walked, and she finally found this barn. She knew this barn also in her dream. It was an old family friend, a Christian family friend that she knew them. And she goes into this barn, and she finds the haystack that her mother pointed to, and she falls asleep. She wakes up the next morning, starving. She hasn't eaten in days. And she decides she's going to go roam around to try to find some sort of food. And she goes out, and this by the way is a life risk for her, because if somebody finds her that's not really so into Jews, which not too many people were, she would be dead. So she went and she found this farmer, and he happened to give her bread and milk, and she quickly took it and brought it back to her her little hiding spot, and she wolfed down the entire bread. And when she was talking, she was making a little noise, and then suddenly she hears a voice, "Who's there?" And she jumps, and before she turns around, she's like, this is it, that's it. They found me, they caught me, and that. She turns around and she sees there's, somebody like waking up in the back of the barn. And she looks and this person looks familiar from the distance. She gets closer, and she couldn't believe her eyes. Both of them freeze for a second, and she's looking at her brother, the one that died. And she's like, Yudo, is that you? And he's like, Esther, is that you? And they both run and they embrace each other, and they hug and they cry. And she said, I thought you were dead. And he said, I thought you were dead. And they usually explain the story. Yudo said, I was the only one that survived. And Esther said, and she escaped and she came here. And so the brother asked her, says, how do you know to come here? So she said, mother came to me in a dream last night and told me to come here. And she's like, it's unbelievable that, she got that information to go meet with her brother. And together they're hidden there for 9 months. The Christian owner of the barn, when, they went over to them and they said, listen, we have an extra, occupancy in the room. He says, if God brought you together, who am I to take you apart? And for 9 months they stayed together over there until they were liberated by the Russian army. And they're the ones, she's the one who wrote over the story. So here you see a story about a dream that's obviously very, very difficult to make up and very difficult to actually come to, where would people, come up with that. So there are many people that, they hear dreams and say, it's nonsense. There are many people that take dreams very personally, and some dreams they take very seriously, and some dreams, if they have nightmares, they can't sleep, and, it bothers them a lot. So, B'ezrat Hashem, the goal is to understand and to uncover the secrets of dreams, and what's really the Torah says about dreams. So before we get to what the Torah says, yes, please.
Would we talk about, can I control my dreams?
Usually not. That's called lucid dreaming, and that's science speaks about it a lot. But we're probably not going to cover that. If you are interested, you could go research lucid dreaming. There are a few books written about it. Very interesting how you could, in your dream, once you know that it's a dream, you could actually control it. And it's also vivid dreaming. It's the same concept.
But is that something that we should do,
No.
in the guidelines of?
No, you don't have to do that.
very spiritual thing, dreams, right?
Yeah, dreams are very spiritual. So, okay, so we'll begin with what science says about dreams. So, first of all, one of the first people probably in the science world, and I'm saying since the science revolution, that spoke about it was Freud. Freud actually wrote an entire book called The Interpretations of Dreams. In the Interpretation of Dreams, he speaks about dreams and speaks about, what do they mean anything. And he explained it to me. He explained to me that when a person dreams, a person's really dreaming his inner desires. People have desires that they cannot let out and fulfill. So those desires that they can't fulfill, they present themselves in a dream. So he says that, and he explains it in his, whoever took psychology will be familiar with this, the id, the ego, and the superego, right? So the id you have is your desires, your urges, your pleasures that you want, your pulse, your inside forces that make you want to do certain things. Then you have something called the ego, which is like the conscious, which says like, hey, don't do everything that you want to do. And then there is the superego, which is sort of the filter on the id, sort of it protects over the, your desires that you don't do anything too crazy. When he says when you dream, he says the id is basically your desires are left free to roam. And, you let free to roam and you get to release all your urges and your desires that you need. So he goes and he explains that when a person dreams, he sees all these weird things because that's his really inside desires. However, there's sometimes that people are so twisted that if the mind lets him see what he really desires, he's going to be really troubled by that. So then this is where the superego comes in and sort of like says, okay, hold up. You're a twisted mind. I got to protect you, and that's why they jumble up the dreams, and the dreams come up like making no sense. So that's how Freud explains it. However, so Freud was asked, can you tell the future with dreams, right? And he said absolutely not. There's no way that from dreams you can tell the future. So we know that science always changes, right? So it's a wonder why people believe it. We'll speak about that soon, though. So recently there was we'll speak about, I'll speak about very briefly a small 2001 September 11th story that what happened was there was once a woman that was supposed to go to Disneyland, and she was supposed to go to Disneyland, and she kept on dreaming, that everything was going dark, and she was spinning out of darkness, and there was a man, she didn't know who it was screaming the number 2830. 2,830, and she had no idea what that meant. And it really bothered her, and she said, you know what, we're not flying. And she canceled against her husband's wishes, she canceled the entire flight. And it turns out that the flight that she canceled was one of the planes that hit the towers, right? And the number that she dreamt, 2,830, was one of at that time was the tally of dead people in the whole attack. So here we see that it did sort of tell her something in the future. But now let's look at something a little bit different called the Aberfan tragedy. The Aberfan tragedy was a very interesting, well-studied case. What happened was it was in a place in Aberfan, Wales, in October 21st, 1966, where there was a village, and it was on the bottom of like a mountain. And one morning, there was an entire like mudslide, sort of like an avalanche of rocks and mud and trees that fell on from the mountain into the village. And what happened was that the entire village that entire section was covered with dirt and rocks and completely demolished. There was a school right at the foot of the mountain, and 116 children and 28 adults perished in that. Mudslide. So there was a famous psychiatrist that lived nearby by the name of Dr. John Barker. He put an ad slowly right after this in the paper, and he said, anybody who had previous knowledge of this happening, please write to me. And he got 76 letters from it. So out of the 76 letters, 26 of them were dreams, right? And he had criteria. People are just going to be like, yeah, I dreamed about it. He says, how do I believe you? So he had criteria that it had to be validated. And his criteria was, number one, is the dream had to be told to a reliable witness prior to the event happening. Which means that the person had a dream about that happening, and he told somebody else, hey, I had this weird dream of this happening, before it happened. Then the criteria number two is that the gap between the event and the dream be as close as possible. Right now, like 6 years ago, I dreamt that there was going to be a mudslide, but rather that it was very close as possible. Number three it would be completely unlikely for the dreamer at the time, which means the dreamer had no idea that this was supposed to happen, and he still dreamt it. And number 4 is that the dreamer dreamt it in a visualized manner, not in a sort of, somebody wrote a really dark poem in my dream, and I could interpret it to mean whatever I want. It had to be visualized. And number 5, the details of the dream matches the details of the event, right? So he was very specific in his criteria, and he had a few cases that actually met all this criteria. Of the most famous one was a girl, I think she was 6 years old if I'm not mistaken, by the name of Earl Mai. Earl Mai, what happened was that she came to her mother the night before that this happened. And she said, "Mommy, I had a very bad dream last night." And she said, she kept on saying that something bad is going to happen to her. And mother says, "No, nothing's bad is going to happen to you. Don't worry about it." And she then explained to her mother the dream. She said, in the dream, she says, "I went to school and the school was gone. It was all black and it was all dirt and it was nothing there." And she says, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's just a dream." And the little girl replies, says, "Mommy, don't worry about it. I'm not afraid to die. When I die, I'm going to be next to Peter and June." And the mother got a little bit scared of that, but she's like, "Okay, here's some ice cream, here's a lollipop. Go and play. It's nothing." The next day, she went to school, and she was the one who was perished, and she was one of the people that died in that mudslide. And the mother didn't even put everything together until they were buried all in a communal grave. All the people that died in that thing. When she was buried, she looked into the right. There was a boy named Peter. On the left was a girl named June, right in between there. Right. So she got all this information before it happened. Right. So then science started saying, all right, well, maybe you can, tell the future, right? So now they're jumping back and forth on how exactly, where exactly they are holding. But let's just explain a little bit how science explains dreams. Science, first of all, has no definite explanation on understanding dreams. They're still not sure exactly how it works. So one of the most widely accepted understandings of it is something called the activation synthesis theory, and I'll explain it in like layman's terms. There's something in the brain called pons. Pons is like a relay station between different parts of the brain, right? And what the science say is that in the dream these pons they fire at random in the middle of the night, and they're firing this information at random. The mind interprets it as sort of pictures and designs and colors and whatever it is, and that transforms into a dream. Right? However, according to this theory, there is the dreams have absolutely zero meaning, and they're just random, electrical brain impulses that are, sometimes to memory, sometimes to not, but completely random, mean absolutely nothing. That's one theory. There are other theories that say that no, that the dreams help you to keep the information that you process through that day. Then there's another theory that says no, the dreams help you forget the information in that day. Right, so there's a big machloket and all the big science people, big argument on what exactly it means in dreams. But there's an interesting research that was done on remembering dreams. There are some people who don't remember dreams, and there's some people that remember dreams. Right, so they did a research in this was published in the Journal of Neuroscience. That it was a university in Rome that they decided that they want to figure out how people remember dreams. So what they did was that they took 65 students and they put them in their laboratory, whatever. So and they put them in there, and they for 2 nights. The first night they did nothing, just to get used to. It was room controlled, it was temperature controlled, and it was soundproof. Just for them to get used to it, they slept through it, and it was fine. The next night, they all set them up with machines, right, to monitor their electrical brain impulses. So they explained that there are 4 types of electrical brain waves. Number 1, there's delta, theta, alpha, and beta, right? And each one represents a different, variations of what's going on in your brain. So together, they make up something called electroencephalography, right, which is the brain impulses. So otherwise known as EEG. So what they did was that this is how they did the study, is that they realized that when do most people dream? During REM cycle, right? Rapid eye movement. And they realized if they dream mostly over there, so they woke these students up sporadically throughout the night, and they had a diary next to them. And when they woke them up and said, "Tell us what you dreamt right now." And they wrote it down what they dreamt, and they fell back asleep. And they realized the people that remembered it more, they had an increase in the theta brain waves. And what they realized was the increase of the theta in the frontal lobe. This is the same part of the brain that we use to keep our memories. And let's say we see something and we want to remember it, and when we're awake, it's the same part of the brain that we use when we're awake that we use when we're sleeping to remember things. Right? So they realized that that's when people that's how dreams get remembered. Then they wanted to figure out and it's a different study, that how come some people remember and some people don't. And they found out that some people, why do some people remember it, is that the people that remember dreams more often are the ones that wake up more sporadically throughout the night. Which means is you're more likely to remember your dream, according to science, if you wake up right after the dream, as opposed to you wake up and then. So if somebody wakes up in the middle of the night a few times, they'll remember the dreams more often as if somebody that doesn't wake up. And that's why sometimes, according to science, there are people that don't remember the dreams because they're very strong. And they also base this off the alpha waves and the response to outside stimuli. Which this is not a science class, and I'm going pretty deep into science, so we're just going to leave it as an overview. Is this is how they understand it. So. It was also interesting that Abraham Lincoln, he was assassinated. So in 1865, 2 weeks before he was shot dead, he had a dream that he told his wife. And he told his wife he was in a dream, and in the dream there was a funeral going on in the White House. So he goes over to somebody and says, "Who's in the casket?" So he said, "It's the president." And he says, "Oh, okay, that's interesting." And he wakes up. He tells his wife, and they didn't think anything about it. 2 weeks later, he died from an assassination. Right, so there is definitely something going out there in science that's very conflicting, right? Which is also brings us to mind that how come? You had a question? Yeah.
It's a little off topic.
That's all right.
Do you think some people are more intuitive with their dreams? Because that happened to him, but some people don't have.
Yes, yeah. There are some people. Yeah, they're more usually people that are, and it's not a blanket statement that people are more spiritual. Are more close to that side of themselves will tend to take them more seriously and hence remember it more. Yeah, so that is.
They'll remember it, but everyone has those dreams. Just certain people remember it more because they.
So there are people that don't dream. According to science, if somebody had certain damage in their brain, they don't dream. And it's a very unhealthy, it's healthy to dream. It's very healthy for science to dream. And so there are certain people that don't dream. And depends on what the issue is. So let's say somebody's completely healthy and he still doesn't remember dreams. So then we'll speak about what the Torah says. Science is very foggy about all this information. Right? Which brings us to also to mind that science is very interesting. If I tell you something that the scientists say, right? If you drink 6 cups of water a day, it's going to make you lose weight. Bring the water. No one's asking questions. Yeah, whatever. L'chaim. And you drink all the water. Right? They could say for a baby, for example, sleep on the back. All right, all the babies are sleeping on the back. 2 years later, no, sleep on the stomach. All right, so everybody's sleeping on the stomach. We changed our mind, sleep on the side. And people are jumping like ping pong balls, listening to everything they say. What happens if the Torah says don't do something? Right? Everybody's, is this the rabbis? Or is this the really Torah? How do you know? How do you know this? Everyone always asks questions on the Torah. Right? Science, everyone takes for granted. The Torah is one thing that never changes. Always stays the same. Science is always changing, which brings you to think about, why is it that everybody takes science? Yeah, we accept everything. Torah, people don't accept. So at first, when I thought about this is a idea that came to my mind a long time ago. I thought, okay, it's a very simple answer. Is because when you learn Torah, it obligates you. When you learn science, it doesn't obligate you. So that's why people want to refute the Torah as opposed to refute science. But then I realized that's not true. Because science could say, carrots are very fattening. Everyone's going to stop. So it does affect people. So it does affect them. So why is it that the Torah people ask questions and the science people don't ask questions? The only answer I was able to come up with is one person by the name of Mr. Satan, right? He does a very good job at what he does, right? You realize some people they fight for something. They realize, I don't even know why I'm fighting anymore. Sometimes you're fighting, you're in a relationship and you're fighting. You're like, I don't even know why, but I'm so deep into it. Let me just go forward. I'm going to win this thing, right? The Satan goes and he knows what to do. He'll cause problems where the same scenario in a different situation would cause no problems at all. Okay, so now moving forward, the question that I wanted to discuss now is, why do we sleep? Right? What is the purpose of sleep? So first of all, there's a very interesting, they made a research on animals that sleep and how long certain animals sleep. So listen, I'll list a few things. The brown bat sleeps for 19.9 hours, which means 82.9% of its life is sleeping, right? Then you have the python, sleeps for 18 hours a day. 18 hours a day, so they're up for very, very little time of their life, right? Let's say you go the opposite end. Let's say a horse. A horse only sleeps 2.9 hours a day. 2.9 hours. That's it. You know how much you could accomplish by sleeping 2.9 hours? A giraffe, only 1.9 hours. Like basically 2 hours a night and it's good, right? A human, it really depends, right? You have an infant that's sleeping like 16 to 18 hours. Then you have a teenager sleeping about 24 to 25 hours in a 24-hour period. And then you have like an elderly person sleeps 5 to 5.5 hours, right? But the people, the big holy rabbis, they're able to sleep very, very little time. They spend the entire day learning. You know how much they get to accomplish, which is without all this time sleeping. So it's a very interesting thing about it. Now, what's the whole purpose of sleep, right? So the purpose of sleep is not only to rejuvenate your body, it's also to rejuvenate your body and your soul, right? And the easiest proof for this is that if someone's laying in bed, doesn't sleep for 11 hours or 12 hours, and he has somebody else that's sitting right next to him and took a half-hour power nap, the one who took the power nap is going to be a lot more refreshed than the one that laid down in bed for 12 hours. Which means is that the sleep does a lot more, because the body, you're doing the same thing. So you're okay. So you have a little bit more going on, but you're resting. You're resting, and it's still not doing the same as if you actually sleep. So it works both for the body and the soul. Now the Ramchal speaks about in Derech Hashem, section part 3, section 1. If anybody wants to look it up, very interesting of what happens when a person sleeps. What happens to the soul, right? We know the soul goes up and the soul, goes different places. What actually happens to the soul when the person sleeps? So he explains that there's 5 parts to the soul, right? You have the nefesh, the ruach, the neshama, the chia, and yichida, right? Those are the 5 parts. Each part is located in a different part of the body, and some parts are not even inside the body. So he says when you go to sleep, 4 out of the 5 parts leave your body. They leave your body and they roam in the upper spheres and the other realms. Yeah.
Can you repeat the parts?
Yes, it's nefesh, ruach, neshama, chia, and yichida. Right? In general, nefesh is generally located in the liver. Ruach is located in the heart. Neshama is in the brain. Chia is surrounding the body, and yichida is above. Right? This is an explanation that I heard.
The brain, and what's the other? Ruach is heart.
Ruach is heart.
Neshama is brain.
Chia is surrounding and Yechida is above. All right, I heard this a long time ago from Rabbi Zamir Cohen. He explained it the other way.
Mm-hmm.
So
a lot about this topic in his book.
Mm-hmm. So the idea is he explains the Ramchal explains that when a person sleeps, the soul leaves his body. The soul leaves the body and it gets to roam in different places. Now, depending where it's allowed to roam and who it's going to communicate to, is it going to communicate with angels? Is it going to communicate with demons? Is it going to communicate with nobody? Right? And depending on the information that he's going to receive or she's going to receive in the dream at night. And he explains also this is why.
Who's deciding who's going to communicate with?
Only all comes from God. All comes from God, and depending on your level, right? The higher person, if somebody goes and falls asleep watching TV and a movie, right? He's not exactly being welcomed into the holiest of holiest, in the heaven. They'll be like, yes, why don't you come? Because when you go up to heaven, whatever you're thinking about when you're falling asleep is the information that you're coming with into heaven. So that's why it's good to fall asleep thinking about something holy, right?
So bad, because a lot of people go to sleep watching TV.
It's a big problem, yeah.
Shoot. So if you were like, let's say for someone who watches TV and they want to step it up, so you would say not to watch TV before you go to sleep is better. Like if they had to choose one time of the day, would be better. Yeah. Like during the day as opposed to when they go to sleep.
Right. I like the way you phrased it because you knew where I was going with that. You should not watch TV at all. Right. It's a waste of time. You don't gain anything from it. Absolutely nothing. There's nothing that you gain from TV except depression. Right? And the easiest proof is because when you're watching TV, you're seeing all these people that are amazingly dressed and looking amazing, and they do, meanwhile, you see, like, say, a woman in high heels running 14 miles an hour, doing 3 somersaults and landing perfectly without breaking a heel, and you're like, wow, I can't even walk down the stairs without breaking a heel, and then you have a guy over there that, he's sitting over there and he's driving a $200,000 car with muscles bulging out of everywhere, and, while shooting, bad guys. And then you finish the movie, you finish the TV show, and you wake up and you be like, wow, my life is terrible compared to James Bond and whatever is going on over there. This is terrible. So you're in a fantasy world. You come out of the fantasy world and you're like, it's depressing. This is also why all those U.S. Weekly, whatever those fake magazines make so much money. Is nobody in the right mind will be like, here, you want to buy fake news that never ever happened, that never will happen? Like, yeah, sure. Yeah, it's all fake. Everybody knows that buys it is fake. All the celebrity news is all fake. Why do people still buy it? Because people feel good that somebody else is doing bad, right? Because their whole life they're living in that. Everybody knows about all these people in Hollywood, and and they're all looking up to them. And then finally, when something bad happens, they're like, Baruch Hashem, I feel better about myself, right? You should not make your happiness contingent on anybody else other than yourself. TV, movies, all destroy that. All destroy that. Also social media, right? You look at this happy couple. Go to your husband and be like, you never take me out like he does, right? And he goes back. I was like, you don't look like her, and Shalom Beit, right? This is how it works, right? If they don't say it, they think it, right? All these things, social media, all these things are terrible. These are terrible they don't help at all. People say, oh, it helps me relax. Nonsense. It helps you relax for the time that you're there and you see the romantic comedy, so you cry a little bit and you eat some ice cream, and then you get up to your real life and you're even more depressed than you before, right? All it does is an escape. It's an escape for a temporary thing, right? I guarantee you, if you stop watching these things, you'll be a happier person. In the beginning, it'll be very hard, especially if you're really addicted to it. And what is the average time that people actually spend watching TV in America? It was like 4 hours a day, 6 hours a day? Which is, it's unbelievable how much time people just stay glued onto a screen, right? No, brain waves are not working. Everything is just like coming in. It's like a drug. Anyways, okay, I digress. So, all right. So, going back to dreams. So we said that everything leaves from a ruach and up leaves it leaves your body, and inside your body you still have the lowest part of the soul, which is the nefesh. That's why when we say, before we go to sleep, we say Adon Olam. Adon Olam, we say Biyado afkidu ruchi. In his hand, in God's hand, I give my ruach, right? Which means it means that all the parts of my soul is going up from ruach and up, right? So nefesh stays, ruach and up goes to God. So therefore we say Biyado afkidu ruchi, where I'm giving God ruach and up. Ruach and up is all going to God. That's why when we wake up, we say Modeh Ani. Modeh Ani, we say She'echzata bi nishmati. You gave me my soul, right? So the obvious question is that if I gave you the ruach, you should give me back the ruach. Why am I saying giving back the neshama, the soul? So the answer is that there's two parts of a that are correct. There's something called the neshama, which is part of the soul, and then there's a neshama, which means it's the all-encapsulating soul, right? And the thing that we explained last time was there's New York City and there's New York State. They're both correct. New York City is in New York State. So the same idea. Neshama it can mean both things. It can mean just the city, and it could also mean the state. So when we say that in the morning, thank you God for giving me back my neshama, we're saying the all-encapsulating neshama. Everything. You put everything back together again, made me a new person, fresh. So that being said, I want to go. The Torah obviously starts, speaking that there is something like dreams. There is truth to dreams. There is a science to dreams in the Torah, and it means something, right? And the easiest proof is that I'm going to go for the next few minutes, and I'm just going to go just to the first handful of dreams in the Torah, right? If the Torah has something that speaks about dreams, that means it must be true. You can't be like, well, it doesn't exist. It's fake. It's not. If it speaks about it, it's true. And it exists. So the first person that had a dream was Avimelech. I'll give you the sources also if you ever want to look at it. It's Genesis chapter 20, verse 3. It says, God came to Avimelech, in the night. What happened was that Avimelech took Sarah, Abraham's wife, for him, and he wanted to do a certain sin with her. And God came to him and says, you're with a married woman. He says, you're going to die. You go return her. Right? And he went and he returned her because of that dream.
Abimelech was Jewish?
No. There was no Jews at that time. Abimelech was a Ivri. But he was like because the Torah wasn't given yet. But
so that means he was like Abimelech came after Abraham.
Abimelech was in the same time frame.
So how is he Ivri?
Ivri, Avram, Ivri just means the opposite of the end, which means it's just a terminology that is different. Ivri means different, the other side.
Russian, that means Jew.
Oh, really?
Ivri.
So that's probably, they took it from that.
Also, like in Egypt, Ivri were the children of Yaakov.
Yeah, because that's what they were known as. Because there were no...
But no one, like if there was another person that was separate or different that wasn't from the lineage, they wouldn't call them Ivri.
Yeah.
They would?
No, they wouldn't. It's only the people that were... Avimelech was not known as Ivri.
So he was a potential Jew, maybe.
Abraham, no. So it's a very strong... It's a very, it's a lengthy topic. Who's the first Jew? It's the question of that. But...
was he from the same lineage or family?
No. He was a king. Avimelech was a king. And, was in one of the lands over there nearby. So, he was, it's also, Yehudim, or Yehuda, if let's say you're from, the German descent, that comes from Yehuda. Yehuda didn't come yet. The Yehudim, the word Yehudim and Jews didn't come yet. So the next person that had a dream is Yaakov's dream. Yaakov's dream, he had a dream in Genesis chapter 28, verse 12. Right? Yaakov had a dream that he was laying down and he saw a ladder. And in the ladder, there was angels going up and angels going down. Right? In his dream. And then we have, after that, he had Lavan. Lavan was his father-in-law. He had a dream. What happened was Yaakov, and this is located in Genesis chapter 31, verse 24, that he went and Yaakov basically escaped with his wives and children out of the land. And Lavan went and chased after him. And he said, while he was chasing after him, his father was chasing after him, God came to him in a dream and it says, you better not speak to Jacob, not good or not bad, which means basically don't touch him. And when Lavan actually met up with Jacob, he says, God told me, he says, I can't touch you, I can't do any harm with you. So here's another dream that we see in the Torah, that Lavan had a dream. And by the way, these people are having dreams, not all of them are righteous, right? Lavan is not righteous. Avimelech was not a righteous person. He still had these true dreams, which we're going to come to explain later. The next person, probably one of the most famous dreams, is Joseph's dreams, right? Joseph had two dreams, right? In chapter 37. In Genesis, he had a dream that in the dream he had the symbolic meaning of his dream is that his brothers and his parents were bowing down to him, right? And one time he had stars and the moon bowing down to him, another time he had storks that were bowing down to him. So and then after that we had the bakers and the wine dream. This is also in Genesis chapter 40, actually most of chapter 40. What happened was Yosef. I just want to rush through and give me 2 more minutes. We'll finish with all the sources. So there was two people that had a dream while Joseph was in prison. Right, Joseph was in prison, and when he was in prison, there was a baker and a winemaker, and they each had a dream one night. And Joseph looked at them and says, your face look, something down. Is everything okay? And they're like, so the winemaker said, listen, no, I had a dream last night. And in his dream, he explains it to Joseph, and he says, I had there was a vine, and I saw that there was 3 vines, and in the vines they started to bud, and then they started to ripen, and I took the grapes and I squeezed them into a cup and I gave them to Paro. So Joseph said, the interpretation of your dream is that in 3 days' time, compared to the 3 branches, is you're going to go and you're going to be put back in your position that you were once were as the chief winemaker, cupbearer. So the baker heard, this guy interpreted a dream for the good. So he says, let me tell him my dream. He says he had a dream that he had 3 baskets on top of his head. On the toppermost basket was Pharaoh's baked goods. And he saw birds were coming and they were eating from it. So Yosef told him, he says, your dream means that in 3 days' time, Paro is going to come and hang you and you're going to die, right? And in 3 days' time, that's exactly what happened. And Bezat Hashem, when we start explaining on the interpretation of dreams, we'll explain how he figured this out. How was he able to add the details that he looked? Okay, so now there are many people that have dreams, and it really bothers them when they have a deceased person that comes to them in a dream. Let's say they have a deceased relative, a grandfather, a parent, or whatever it is that comes to a friend that comes to them to a dream, and those usually mean hits person a lot at home, right? Either they feel comforted or something bothers them. So what does those dreams mean? Are those dreams mean? Do dead people are no longer alive? Do they know what's going on in this world that they could relay information? Or is it that they're in a different world, they're completely detached? So there was, a short story. It was a family of 5 children, and the father passed away very young. And throughout the first Shiva and the 30 days before to the Shloshim, there was 2 daughters that kept on lighting candles in memory of the father. And after 30 days, they stopped lighting the candle. The father came to a brother in a dream, and he said, it's really dark over here. He looked, it was like he kept on saying, it's very dark. There's no light. What's going on? The brother woke up. He didn't know that his sister stopped lighting the candles. And he calls up the sister and says, I had a weird dream. The first time that, Dad came to me in a dream was last night. And he said something about, it's dark. I kept on, and they were like, oh my God. He's like, we stopped lighting for him. So now they started lighting for him, until this day, they still light for him because of that dream. There are other times that there was sisters that were fighting. And they didn't make up before one of them passed away. And one of them came to one of the sister that passed away came to one of them in a dream and said, listen, you're making it very hard for me over here. She said, when there are 2 sisters that still didn't forgive me, and that's caused me a lot of problems up in heaven now. And so the sister that was down here, that was in the dream, goes over to her sister that passed away and says, how's it going over there? It's like, how are you doing over there? And she says, that I can't really explain too much, but what I can tell you is every little thing that you take on extra in this world, it helps you so much in the next world. And she explained that when she used to wear a wig, when she was married, she used to wear an extra scarf under the wig so that no hair actually accidentally comes out. And she says, you have no idea how much that helps me in this world. He says, everything that you do, it comes into account, and you have to pay for every single little thing. There's nothing that goes untouched. There's no like, oh, forgives these, all right, no, it's okay, come on, pass through. Everything comes into account. So the question is now is these are stories that were recent stories. What does the Torah say? So there's a Gemara in Bachot, page 18b. That asks, do the dead people know what's going on in this dream? So there's one time there was a Chassid that he gave once charity, a dinar for a poor person, and it was based on some financial issues. The wife was upset that he gave the poor person money, and this Hasid felt she was getting upset at him, and he felt that he was getting a little bit like disturbed by it. So he decided he's going to go and sleep in the cemetery. Right. So what happened? Well, the reason is that when a person feels angry, that means that you're arrogant. So he decided what he's going to do is going to sleep in the cemetery. The cemetery is very humble. It makes you humble, right? You see where you're going to end up, right? There was once a very wealthy person that had a lot of money, one of the wealthiest Jews, and he built himself a coffin. And every so often he would go and put himself in the coffin, just to picture that not to get too haughty, not to get too arrogant. This is where you're going to end up, and everybody ends up over there. So he goes into the cemetery and he falls asleep. This was on Rosh Hashanah, and the commentaries explain that the following things happened to him in a dream. He overheard two souls conversing, and there were two girls that passed away very young, and they were conversing with each other. Says, "Hey, listen, let's go into the next world and see what's going to happen. Now is Rosh Hashanah. Everything is going to be decided what's going to happen the next year. Let's see what happens the following year." So one of the girls said, "Listen, I can't. I was buried in an improper way. I'm embarrassed." So she said, "Fine, I'll go and I'll tell you what's going on over there." So she said, "Fine." So she goes. She comes back and she says, "Listen, I heard." He says that the people that plant in the first part of the year, there's going to be a very big hailstorm and it's going to destroy everything. So. And then he wakes up. This person that was sleeping in the cemetery wakes up, and he's like, "All right, this is inside information. Let me use it." He goes, and for that year, he was in the agricultural business, and he decided he's not planting anything in the first part of the year. And from right after the first part of the year, when everybody planted, there was a huge hailstorm, destroyed everything in the fields. He went and he planted in the second part of the year, and everybody's fields got destroyed. His field prospered, right? And he made a killing of it because he was able to charge a lot more. The next year, he said, "Listen, that was pretty successful," and he went back. He slept there, and he got the same conversation, right? One of the girls said, "Hey, why don't we come up?" The other one said, "Listen, I can't. Why don't you go and tell me what happened?" And she goes and she finds out that this time they switch it around. The first year, people that are planted in the first part of the year are going to be very successful. People that plant in the second part of the year are going to be not successful. Now, everybody else remember what happened the previous year, so they're like, "Listen, we're not going to take the chance. We're planting in the second part of the year." And he was the only one that planted in the first part of the year. And then he was successful, and everybody else's field was a big hailstorm, and it destroyed their thing. So the wife said, "Listen, how are you so successful? You're usually not that good, and how are you able to be so know all this information?" So he explained to her the whole story. And one time she was talking to the mother of the girl that passed away that was buried in in a place that she was embarrassed, and she accidentally let it slip. She says, "Well, your daughter is buried in a certain manner. That's very embarrassing," and that was the end of the story. The following year, the third time this Hasid went to sleep in the cemetery, they hear overheard the same conversation. "Hey, why don't we go up to the next world to see what's going on for this year?" And they replied back, "We can't. The living are listening to our conversation." Right? Which means the Gemara learns from this story that the dead people people that passed away have a connection. They're able to find out what's going on in this world. That being said, however, a person should not go, and there's a Gemara, straight up Gemara, Bachot, yeah.
So let's say nowadays, even when you're in a cemetery, whatever.
Don't sleep there.
Don't sleep. No, but let's say normally when you're in a cemetery, that's a place where they would be more aware of what's transpiring as opposed to.
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. It depends. It depends a lot.
Because
generally the souls are. It's very.
People they're spiritual. They're not. It's not like it matters where their body is.
Right. But generally there is where the grave is. There's a small part of the soul that's there, especially in the day that they pass away. That's why people go. It does have connection with there is a connection there, and there are. It's a very complex answer because there are souls that are roaming throughout the spirits are roaming throughout the world. There could be stuff over here that you don't see, right? So. But the idea is a person should not go, let's say somebody passed away and ask for, I'll tell you a story to explain it. There was a young girl that lost her father, and she took it very hard. She wasn't so young anymore. She was eventually, she got married and then she went through a divorce. She was going through a very, very hard time in her life. And her father just passed away also, and she took it very hard. And she kept on talking to her father's picture. And she's like, and she was explaining, literally she was going through a really, really tough time. And then she kept on praying. She's like, please come to me in a dream. And she kept on praying and crying and praying and praying and praying. Finally, the father came to her in a dream. And he said, listen, it's very difficult for me to be over here. It's very difficult for me to come to you, but all you have to know is everything's going to be okay, and something like you're going to find someone soon. I think about a few months later, she found her next husband. And now she's married with a few kids with that husband. Right? So
It's not okay to
you should not
to
request.
pray for.
Yeah, you should not request to have signs. You should not request any of that stuff. Yeah. To have people that pass away come give you, speak to you in a dream and things like that. Even though it's sometimes comforting for the person that's down here that lost a loved one, it's very difficult for the soul to come down.
But what if you just scary?
People find it comforting if they see, for example, that the deceased is happy, and they're nice and they're comfortable, or they say, don't worry about me, I'm okay now. So they feel a little better about it. So.
But in a dream, like the first story you said about the parents, the mother telling the daughter.
That's something else. You didn't ask for it.
Oh.
If it comes, but don't ask for
Then
it.
you should listen.
Yes, yeah. Well, we'll have to speak about how do you know if it's a real dream or fake dream. We're probably not going to get that today.
Even when a parent comes to you,
Yes.
it could be fake as well.
Yeah.
Real and fake.
Yeah.
Then how would you determine?
So stay tuned. Yeah.
Sometimes you want to think about it so much.
Yeah. Sometimes if you think about it, it's going to come. And that's why it's one of the reasons that it's fake. Okay, so there is the Gemara speaks about three different ideas. Well, actually, it speaks many, but we're going to speak about three different ideas that it speaks about dreams. Number one is it says that even a real dream, even though you know it's real, it has some nonsense in it. And the proof is when you have, let's say, Yosef's dream. Yosef had a dream that he had 11 stars and the sun and the moon bowing down to him. And the Gemara says, the sun, the 11 stars is his brothers. The sun represents his father. The moon represents his mother. But the question is his mother passed away already by the time he had the dream. So how is the moon over there bowing down? It makes no sense. So the Gemara says every single dream, even if it's a real dream, has some nonsense into it. Which means there could be a lot of information given to you in the dream, and you feel like it's vivid, it's real. There's something in there that's not true, right? That's in a generalized concept. Now, the next thing the Gemara says is that a dream depends on its interpretation, right? So don't just go announcing on Facebook, hey, I had this weird dream last night, right? And then you have Psychic Mary coming to tell you, you're like, well, your dream means this, right? And then Shaniqua is going to come and tell you, well, I'll tell you what this dream, I saw in my crystal ball that you're going to meet someone special in the next 5 to 10 years, right? And, they'll tell you, don't publicize it, right? If you have a dream and you're nervous about it, you tell somebody who's well-versed in the Torah and a righteous person and well-versed in dreams, and then they hopefully could guide you in the right way. So, and the next idea, because again, it's based off the interpretation. Dreams go after the mouth, which means is if, let's say someone has a dream, someone interprets a dream, and we'll speak about this interpretation, it goes how the person's going to interpret it. That's how the dream's going to come true.
What was the quote? Something about the mouth?
The dreams go after the mouth. So, the last thing is Gemara in Bachot in 57b that says that sleep is 1/60th of death, dreams are 1/60th of prophecy, fire is 1/60th of hell, honey is 1/60th of the man, and Shabbat is 1/60th of the world to come. Right? So now we have to understand what's this number 1/60th. Right? What is it 1/60th?
Where does it mention that?
Bachot 57.
Can you repeat all?
Sure. Sleep is 1/60th of death. Dream, just do this. Sleep, dream. Fire, you're not going to actually understand that. Sleep is 1/60th of death. Dream is 1/60th of prophecy. Fire is 1/60th of hell. Honey is 1/60th of the man, and Shabbat is 1/60th of Olam Haba. So what does it mean 1/60th? Right? What's this number? So I could show it to you afterwards. So what it means is that if let's say you have a big pot. If you have a big pot of kosher food, and then you have a little piece of non-kosher food falls into that pot, and that little piece is less than 1/60th of volume to the large pot, and it meets other criteria, it's not spicy, it doesn't have any flavor, it doesn't change the taste and things like that, then it becomes nullified and the pot is still kosher, right? Don't, again, use a rabbi at this discretion, right, if this happens. So, but that's a generalized concept. Now, what does that mean? Why is it? Because the answer is, the reason is because when you're saying 1/60th, it means it's a very small, minute amount that's in there, which means it's there, but it's not really there. That's why it's kosher. It's there, but it's not there. The same idea. Dreams is 1/60th of prophecy. Dreams can be prophetic, but most of the time it's not. So it's there, but it's not there. Right? The Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim explains, and he says, the way that people dreams is by the way of the imagination. That the imagination gets manipulated, and you're shown certain things. In prophecy, for all prophets except for Moshe Rabbeinu, they all dreamt with their imagination, which means their imagination was the only thing that was was active at the time, and God sort of made their visions based on whatever He wanted through their imagination, and that was a prophetic vision, right? So He says because prophecy uses imagination, and because dreams use imagination, therefore we related 1/60th of dream is a prophecy. Make sense? Okay, so now there's a very interesting. There's a Shmuel, someone from the Gemara, that he used to be like, if it was a good dream, he was like, yeah, the dream means something. If it was a bad dream, he's like, nah, dreams mean nothing. And he had verses for this. So he used it. There's a verse in Zechariah, chapter 10, verse 2, that says, "V'chalamot shavi dabel," which means, translation means, dreams mean nothing. Dreams speak of vanity. Dreams mean shavi dabel. And then there is another pasuk in Numbers chapter 12, verse 6, that says, "B'chalom adabel bo," which means is, I will speak to him in a dream. So there's two very contradicting verses in the Torah. Number one tells you dreams means nothing. Number two tells you God's going to speak to you in a dream. So which one is it? So the Gemara asks this question and answers in Gemara in Bachot 55, explains and says that what it means is it depends where the source of the dream is. When is it dreams are fake? When the source of the dream is through a demon. When is a dream real? When is the source of a dream is through an angel. Right? So that's what the Gemara says. Now, how do you tell if it's something, if it's a dream from an angel versus a dream from a demon? Right? So there's a very big Kabbalist that lived in Baghdad. His name was Rabbi Huda Ftaya. He had in his he has a book called a sefer called Minchat Yehuda. In Parshat Miketz, he speaks about the how to tell the difference between demons and angelic dreams. So he says when a person has he first explains it. He says, if it's a dream that you're scared inside the dream, which means is in the dream something bad is happening and you're sweating, your heart's pounding, and you cannot focus, and you're scared. You're scared in the dream. That's a dream that's not an angelic dream. It's a demonic dream. So he explains it. He says why would he explains it first with a story from the Torah that there was a prophet Isaiah that he came over to King Chizkiah and he says, you're going to die. So he says, why am I going to die? He says, not only you're going to die in this world and not live in the world to come. So he says, why? And he said, because you didn't try to have kids. He didn't get married. So King Chizkiah said, okay, so give me your daughter and we'll get married now to avert the decree. So the prophet said, no, it's done. It's sealed, you got that thing. So King Chizkiah goes back to him and says, listen, there's no such thing as it's done. Even if you have a knife at your neck, you should never give up hope. And he brought this from his ancestor, the King David. He says, a person should never give up hope. He says, for what did God tell you this? Just for FYI, you're going to die? God doesn't give you information unless you're able to do something with it. So if God gives you a bad dream or whatever it is, there's a purpose for it. He says, there is no purpose of God scaring you in the dream. That doesn't help. Afterwards, you get scared, that's something else. But in the dream yourself, it's of no purpose. God wants to give you the information. So it says, if a person gets in the dream gets scared, that must mean that that's a demonic dream because there's no purpose of it. However, and he brings some criteria how to know if it's an angelic dream. Number one is if it's a very, very clear dream. It's very vivid. And there's not a bunch of unrelated ideas, right? It's not like you're walking and suddenly you're on a plane, and then you're flying and then you're riding a giraffe, right? It's like completely weird, different things. He says additionally, you're not frightened, like we spoke about. You're not frightened in there. And third is that you perceive yourself as you're totally awake. Very, very clear. It says if you have these criteria, it's very likely that the dream is from an angelic dream, and you could take it for that it means something. And the demonic dream, again, is the one that you're scared, and you're scared in the dream. It doesn't really mean anything. And you don't have to worry about that. So he says also, if somebody does have these like demonic dreams and they have these nightmares, how to get rid of it is one of the things, and we'll speak about it when we speak about nightmares, but just to, so being that we're on the subject, is that it's very important for a person to say Kriyat Shema Lamita before they go to sleep. It's a skula to have good dreams, right? It's very apropos to have good dreams. Someone has bad dreams, very important, even if you don't have bad dreams, say Shema before you go to sleep. So there's also that even though that these demonic, if I could say, dreams are fake, there's still sometimes truth to it. And the explanation is as follows. It says, let's say you have somebody that's a pathological liar. Always lies through their teeth. Everything they'll lie, right? Everything that they say comes out a lie. But, sometimes they'll say the truth sometimes, by accident maybe, right? Sometimes they'll come in and it's wet. It'll be like, is it raining outside? And be like, yeah, it's raining outside. No, I don't believe you. You're a liar. You probably just watered yourself and then you came in. Be like, no, sometimes he says the truth. Right? So to the demon. If let's say you have a dream that it's very possible that even if it's a fake dream and even if it's a demonic dream, and it's still possible that it has some truth into it, right? So he says. So there was the difference is that the dreams that come from a angel, they could come true 5, 10, many years in the distance, because angels have they have information on the distant future. Demons do not have the information on the distant future. They have only for the short, near foreseeable future. So sometimes they'll give you information, in a dream, and it might come true, but it could still be from a demon, right? Because they have the short foreseeable future. How they get into your dreams is they go through your ear. right? They could whisper certain things in your ear and you make you dream certain dreams like that. And he explains, Abu Huda Fataya explains that you could even test this. You go to a little child and you could tell them, you could start whispering in its ear, different, apples, green apples, right when he falls asleep. And he says in the morning, you could ask him, say, or later when he wakes up, you ask him, what did you dream about? He'll say apples or something like that. But this is particularly right when you fall asleep, right in the beginning, because that's when your mind is more, that's why people have those types of dreams, right when they fall asleep. It usually doesn't mean anything, right? As opposed to dreams right before you wake up. There was one somebody that went over to Rabbi, and he tells over his dream. He said, I had a dream that his brother passed away, and in his dream the brother told him where he's buried. And he goes, and they found out that he died really recently. I guess it was like some murder case or something, and they found out exactly where he was buried. So he goes over to the rabbi and says, listen, I'm not a righteous person. I thought only righteous people get these, dreams that are real. So he says that, he answered, he says, most of the time, yes, but it's not unlikely to somebody who's wicked, somebody who doesn't have that could still get real dreams. That could still get, and the proof is from the Torah also. We have Lavan, we have Bilam also has these dreams, right? These people, Abimelech, they have these dreams that they're not by any means, which way or form, in a holy, righteous level. Okay, so there is any questions so far? Make sense? We're clear? Okay, so for the next few, we have a few more minutes, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So there was a Gemara in Baba Batra in 10a that says Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had a dream, and he had a dream that his nephews were going to lose 700 gold coins from the government. So that year, so he goes. He had a dream that they were going to lose 700 gold coins. Didn't say from where. And right when he woke up, he goes over to his nephews and says. They started saying, okay, why don't you give charity for this cause? Why don't you give charity for this cause and this cause and this cause? So they started giving. And throughout the year, he keeps on telling them, give more charity, give more charity. So I didn't ask any questions. The big rabbi says, they give. And at the end of the year, they get a notice, a memo. Hey, the IRS is coming after you, right? And the IRS back then is very different than the IRS is here, right? It's not like, let me see your papers. It's like, here's what you owe, and we don't care about anything else. This is what you're going to pay. We're going to start taking stuff away. So when they heard about this, they got really scared. They're going to take away the entire business. So he says, don't worry, they're only going to take 17 coins, 17 dinars. So they're like, all right, it's a weird number. They come, and they only take 17 dinars, right? So then they go back to the rabbi and says, how is that possible? How did you know exactly how much you were supposed to take? So he said, it's very simple. I had a dream a long time ago that you were going to lose 700. So I pulled it out of you through tzedakah, and I knew that's what you had remaining that you didn't give yet. So they said, Rabbi, how come you didn't just tell us? We would have given you 700 on the spot. Why did we have to lose the 17? So you know how the people say, right? When they get a ticket, they'd be like, I wish I would give this at least to charity. Why'd I have to spend $500 in the stupid city, right? They're going to do nothing with it. So I might as well give it to charity, right? Always after the fact. So he said, why you tell us? We would have gave everything. Why do we have to give 17 dinars? So he said, if I would have given to you, your reward wouldn't have been as great. You would have given because you know you're going to lose it. He says, I want you to get the full reward for tzedakah. That's why I gave it to you without even realizing, without you realizing that you're going to be giving it anyway. That's why a lot of people, it's why don't we know the future? You don't know the future, it gives you more of a reward. If you know the future, you know what happens, right? You don't get as much reward, right? Besides the fact that all these fortune tellers, palm readers, psychics, all these things are forbidden from the Torah, right? You're not allowed to, you should not go to them, and you should refrain from them. They don't help you at all. The only thing they do is they harm you.
Even Kabbalists, like the Jewish
You have to be very careful with Kabbalists also, that if they're telling you the future also. Some of them are real, most of them are, but you have to be careful. Some of them are not who they say they are. Right, especially if they start asking you for money and things like that. And again, this is case by case. There are many, many holy Kabbalists. I don't want to speak against Chas v'Shalom against any Kabbalist, but there is I'll give you an example. Someone is dating a girl and thinks he's going to get married to them. Right? There are many people nowadays. What they do is they go to certain Kabbalists and they give them the names. Right? Get the names, get the date of birth, and says, oh, is this a match? Right? There are very few people. Generally, the biggest Kabbalist right now, one of the heads of the Yeshiva, Rabbi Yaakov Hillel, he wrote a book called Tamim Tiyeh, and he says you should not do these things. You should not do these things. It says Tamim Tiyeh el Hashem Elokecha. You should be pure to God. If everything matches, Mazal Tov, right? Don't start worrying about all these names. These are not good things. There was somebody that went over to a big rabbi and says, the names don't match, and I really like her, So first the rabbi says, what are you doing? What are you going to the names? He says everything matches, everything is good. He says, go, Mazal Tov, go make the l'chaim. And they went and they got married and they're happily married, right?
So usually when people give names, they give birthdays also.
Mm-hmm.
I always heard that there was truth to that.
There is.
But is it something that we should ask about?
You should still not do it.
You should, right? But let's say let's say if it's before going out and you don't know if
You should still not do
everything
it.
And the mother's name.
You should still not do it. You should still not do it.
Anyone.
The pasuk says tamim tiyeh. You should be pure to God, right? Don't rely on these things. What happens if that's your soulmate, right? And you go and the rabbi says, absolutely not, right? The Kabbalah says, no, don't bother, don't touch this with a 10-foot pole, right? And he made a mistake, a little thing, right? Human error. You just lost your soulmate for what? So it's not worth it.
It's also true that if a guy's mother's name, like he shouldn't date a girl that has the same name as his mom.
Depends. There's some people that say it's fine, it's not a problem, and I know there are people that married them, and
Because some guys.
some people are particular. There are some people that are not.
Me even like, it's.
There's some people that are not. There are people to hold on. I think the Belzer Rebbe, if I'm not mistaken, Bubba Rebbe or something like that said it's absolutely not a problem. If you have that.
It depends on the costume.
The idea is, what is the problem? The problem is let's say he has his, one of the problems is, you have your wife and your mother next to you, and they both have the same name. And let's say their both name is Rachel, right? And you cannot call your mother by the first name, so you say, hey, Rachel. And then, it's not proper for the mother. So there are people that say that it's not a problem. That's not a problem. Obviously, speak to your local rabbi for that. If the man doesn't want to, and he feels like this is my mother's name, and so what, you're gonna force him? But no, go out with me. I'm the one for you, right? You just don't know it yet, right? Here's where we're gonna get married, and here are 3 kids' names. No, I'm not crazy, huh? Yeah.
Sorry. So let's say like if you're not asking if you should even be with the person or not, or let's say people who are already married, is it helpful for them to learn about their own birthdays and mazalot in order to understand each other better and how they can help each other, or you should stay away from that because it gets dangerous?
You should, in a general idea, you should stay away from it. There is a truth to it. There is a science behind it. The Torah does speak about it, but it's very few people actually know it. And it's very dangerous to go into these types of things. I'm very into these things, and I love Kabbalists, and I live. Sometimes if I see this like big Kabbalist that comes in, and I hear stories about him. This is what I live. I love to it, right? Ever since I was a kid, I go to Israel, I go to Kabbalists, right? And I come here also. If Kabbalists come here, I see Kabbalists. I'm not saying anything against Kabbalists. Kabbalists are very holy people, right? But the idea is that there are certain things that it also depends who's doing it, right? You have the biggest rabbi in Israel telling you that, then fine, you could. But just in general, the regular people should not be dealing with it.
You shouldn't ask about it.
You shouldn't ask about it even after you're married, right? What are they going to tell you? They're not going to tell you anything that you don't know. You know what you have to work more about what he's going to start telling you. He'll be like, I see you have an anger issue. Oh, I do have an anger issue. How did he know that? It's like, now I must know. Now I must need to work at it. No, you know beforehand, right? So he just told you. So you're like, wow, that's really cool. But you know what you need to work on beforehand. Everybody knows what they need to deal with before they go into all these people and be like, hey, you should do this and you should deal with that.
Or let's say it's just to understand someone, the person where they're coming from. If like their struggles, then you can like cut them some slack and understand. I don't know.
You could figure it out without that. If you're perceptive enough and you're able to just see what's going on, it's better to avoid these things as much as possible, right? And again, if you want, you can look at it. There's a book called Tamim Tiyeh. It's in English. It's called Faith and Folly, if I'm not mistaken, by Rabbi Yaakov Hillel. And it speaks about all these different types of things on halacha. I think it's called Faith and Folly, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong with that. I know it's by Rabbi Yaakov Hillel, and in Hebrew it's called Tamim Tiyeh. And he speaks about all these things, about palm reading and how you're not supposed to do that also. All different, idea, Kabbalistic things that you're not to say that there's not a truth in it. There is. There is people that know how to read palms, and there is a truth to it. There is people that know how to read faces, and there's a truth to it. But in general, in our day and age, in our level, most people do not, and it's better to refrain from it. Right, it doesn't help, right, and it gets also very dangerous. The people that go and there was a story that once there was someone who went over to a rabbi. The same idea. He asked him to went out and read his palm. And he says, "Don't marry this girl that you're dating," And he went over to another rabbi and he says, "I think I should break it off." They was engaged, and the big rabbi, right, is a big rabbi. He says, "Are you joking?" He says, "What do you mean? What do you mean? Because of this?" He says, "Don't worry about that." And he told him the pasuk Tamim Tiyeh. You have to be pure to God, right? Don't worry about everybody else predicting the future for you. You do what you have to do for God. God will take care of you. Right? The idea is that the more, when you listen to God, God is going to take care of you. God is not going to, even, it shouldn't be said that, but even people that don't listen to God, what do you think? That you're God's children. God's not going to take care of you? Everything that happens for a reason. Right? You want to live a happy life, you want to live a good life, the more closer you are to God, the more closer that you are to the Torah, the happier and more successful, and everything is going to come smooth to you.
Do you have any psukim for that? Like if you want to tell it over to someone?
Which pasuk? Tamim Tiyeh, Hashem Elokecha.
No, I'm saying like the closer you are to God, the better your life will be.
Looking at all the Torah, open any parasha.
Yeah, but like
It says if you listen to me, "Im bechukotai tilechu," look at the parasha
Right.
bechukotai, right? That's
in
it.
a nutshell, like when you're giving it over to someone.
You can look at it bechukotai, parasha bechukotai. It says that if you listen to me, I'll give you blessing, I'll give you rain, I'll give you every blessing that you want. If you don't listen to me, I don't want to list all the curses. There's a bunch of curses there. That's not going to be so great. Any other questions?
If everything happens for a reason, the reason could be bad too, no?
The reason could appear bad, yes. It could appear bad, which means is that I'll give you an example like this. Somebody walks in from a third world country, never saw a hospital before in his life, right? He gets blindfolded, he's on this magic bird, he flies down, he falls down, he doesn't know how he got there. They blindfold him, an airplane by the way, right? They bring him to the hospital, they unblindfold him in a surgery, right? The first time he sees surgery, what does he see? He sees people that are dressed like in masks. They look like ninjas, right? They're not, and there's blood everywhere, and they're each holding knives. And there's a big light, and there's a guy laying there, completely unconscious. The guy's going to pick up the nearest stick and try to, it's like, what are you killing this person for? And everyone's holding back. No, what do you mean? He's like, they're performing life-saving surgery. The guy has a tumor, and they're removing it. And the guy says, what do you mean removing it? Look, he has a knife, and there's blood everywhere, and this guy's passed out. I see his stomach. What do you mean he has a tumor? And he doesn't understand. Right? And he says it looks really bad. The whole situation looks really bad, but really it's for the good. There's sometimes in life that things happen that it looks really bad. It doesn't look like it's good. It says, how could this be for the best? How is it possible that this could be for the best? And the answer is, it's not only for the best, it's the best thing that could have happened to you. Right now you don't see it. It's like somebody walks into a movie in the middle of the scene, right? And he sees somebody pushing a little old lady down the stairs and be like, oh, evil person, right? You didn't see 30 minutes ago that lady just shot, like 40 police officers, right? Black Lives Matter, right? Got to throw that in. So she, and you come in the middle of the show. You're right now, even though you're living your life, you're still in the middle of the show. You don't know your previous reincarnations. You don't know what you happened. You don't know what sins you have to pay for. This is why that people don't understand that there are certain things that people bring bad things happen to themselves. People make bad things happen to themselves. One of the things is that someone doesn't keep Shabbat. Someone doesn't keep Shabbat, even if they do Tshuva, and even if they eventually start keeping Shabbat, they still have to pay for all the Shabbat that they didn't break. Shabbat is one of the 36 things that are karet. That is, you get cut off. And even if you do tshuva on that, you still have to go through suffering in order to get cleansed. So it makes absolutely no sense for somebody to go and break Shabbat for what? To go on the phone, to go shopping, to go, on a car? Because
People who never kept Shabbat and they started keeping Shabbat, now they need to be punished in order to cleanse themselves.
Cleansing is that's more of a Christian term, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. If somebody is about tshuva, right? If somebody's about tshuva, first of all, there's a lot of factors that only God knows how it plays, right? When did the person start becoming about tshuva? Let's say a guy never heard anything about religion. They come into religion, they come into some classes, and they start realizing, okay, this is real. I realized my whole life was fake. I realized that this is the truth, and they start changing their life right then and there, right? That person can, and I'm not saying only God knows, can be considered on the category of Tinok Shenishba. Tinok Shenishba is, for example, you have a little baby that's captured by when he's born, captured and sold to a faraway land.
They're not. Most people are not.
So yeah, but let me explain the concept. So most people are brought up in a completely secular environment. Not only they're brought up in a completely secular environment, they're brought up against religion. They're like, oh, this is not against it, right? Those people everything is fake, so they're not showing the truth. They don't know anything about it. They're very possible, according to some opinions, that it's possible that you could consider them possibly again in the category. Very unlikely though, because there's so much Torah everywhere nowadays. You can't run away from it, right? Christians are becoming, converting. Christians are starting to keep the seven. There's a big movement of 7 Noahide laws. People, I don't know what they're called, the Noahides or something like that. They keep the 7 laws of Noah. So there are people that push it off. They'll come. They know the truth. They know they know how to keep Shabbat. They know they have to keep kosher, but they don't. It's too hard for me. It's too hard. I can't do it right now. Right? That person, absolutely. They can't. God said you have to do it. You have to do it. It's not. It's. The problem is that people say I can't. I can't. It's too hard. That is 100% nonsense. There's no such thing as I can't. It's only I don't want it bad enough. If you want something bad enough, anything you can do. You can do anything that you want if you want it bad enough. The only reason that you're not doing it is because you don't want it bad enough. Right? And it comes to anything. Because school, marriage, whatever it is, anything is accessible to you. Right? I gave you this class, and I give you this example. This is a very, I don't know if I said it over here. There was, and if I did it, it's good. I'll tell you 2 stories to explain how people, give up when they really can't. There was once a marine biologist that did an experiment with a shark, and they put a shark in a big pool. And what they did is that in the pool they put some feeding fish, right? And the shark saw the feeding fish and went like a fat kid off a diet on a cake, completely demolished the entire thing, right? The next time, when the shark was time for feeding again, they put a clear fiberglass, divider right in between them. And they put the shark on one side, and then they put feeding fish on the other side. The shark saw the feeding fish and started running after it and trying to eat it, trying to get it. But it couldn't. It wasn't able to. It wasn't able to actually get it. And for 1 hour, it kept on trying. And the story, I don't want to say because I think I said it before over here, but this, the way that it explains is that eventually they started doing it less and less time. They kept on doing it the next day, and the shark stopped trying to get it so hard after a half hour, and then 15 minutes, and eventually it stopped trying completely. It saw the fish over there, it stopped trying completely, and eventually what happened was they took off the divider. When they took off the divider, the fish were swimming right next to the shark. The shark didn't even eat them. Why? Because it always thought that I can't do it. I can't eat it because I'm blocked with something. A person in their own mind think I can't keep Shabbat. I can't be modest. I can't keep kosher. It's too hard. It's hot. It's this. It's a non-kosher food. It tastes so good. That's nonsense that I can't. It's only the reason is I don't want to. If you want to, you could do anything. Anything is possible, right? There's somebody that wants to lose 50 pounds, right? They can't say I can't. It's I don't want hard. It might be very difficult. I'm not saying it's easy, but you could do it. If you want it hard enough, you can do it. I don't know how we got to here. Any other questions?
We got there by asking if people get punished for it.
Oh, okay. So the idea is, going back to Shabbat. So you can't. There is and there's stories that people come back and they visit their kids, and one of the main things that they say is that everything you get judged to the T. Right? You can't. Over here, you could be like, it's too hard. I can't do it. Yada yada. You give all the excuses. Up there's no excuses. Up there, they know what's going on in your mind. They know what's going on in your heart. They know what's going on in your surroundings, how you were brought up. Everything takes into factor, right? But everything goes according to exactly the way that it's supposed to, right? So everybody knows themselves. Most people, maybe some people it's very hard, very impossible. Most people could keep the basics. It's basics what? Shabbat. So you just keeping Shabbat is just not breaking Shabbat, right? Forget about everything else for now. The number one thing that you have to do is not break Shabbat. Just like sit there. Don't turn on the phone, don't turn on electric, and that's it. Go relax, sleep for 25 hours. Right? You're a girl, so it's easier. It's easier. You don't have to go to shul, you don't have to, there's all different things that it's a lot easier for you. Just sit there, right? And eventually you'll get to enjoy it. Ask people that weren't keeping Shabbat, and they start keeping Shabbat, they say it's the best thing, right? I speak to in the Baruch Hashem, in the men's class, we had a very, very large amount of people that started keeping Shabbat, right? Friends, it usually happens. Yeah, friends usually start. What happens is, and they grow, and they hang out together. They're friends, and they're all keeping Shabbat now. It's an amazing thing. Shabbat is kihi mikor habracha, right? We say that in Lecha Dodi. What the source of blessing is in Shabbat. Your life will be better. Your life will be more blessed when you keep Shabbat. Any other questions? Should we go a little further on the dreams?
Yeah,
please. Go ahead. Yeah, please. Now's the time for questions. Every time it's questions. Huh?
What about dreams in your past life?
So your question is, can you dream about something that happened in a previous life?
Yeah, like let's say somebody has dreams that they don't make sense, but it's always the same topic.
Yeah, reoccurring nightmares usually is where it happens. So yes, there is and this is
not necessarily nightmare. It could be either
a good dream
or a good dream.
So there is documented and this is not in the Torah sources, but there is documented in secular sources where people dream about their previous life. Usually it's more children. It's usually when they're children and they're still connected to that previous, and they dream certain dreams. And there are certain psychologists and psychiatrists that studied those children, and they actually went and they validated the dreams that they had based on the people that they say that they were, and it all correlated. So it's very possible that those people, and this is according to science, right, that they're dreaming past lives, things that are happening to them. Usually it happens when they are younger.
They dream names of people.
They dream about how they die. They dream about, let's say, going into a ship and sinking and then choking, and it's very hard for them to breathe. Things like that.
It's not but it's not so symbolic that they don't.
No, they could actually. It's not symbolic. It's like they see the whole scenario. They see it. They dream about that entire part of their life. Because again, our body is new. You see a little baby. I saw a cute little new baby. That baby could have been here 10 times before. Right? It could be 1,000 years old. This baby. Right? It could have been who knows how many lives that they've been here before. Right? So the body is new, but the soul is still old. That's why you come with baggage. Right? There's a reason why you are born to a certain family. right? There are many people who say, well, it's hard. I was born in a non-religious family. How am I supposed to become religious? Right? There's a reason that you're born in that family and you weren't born in a different family, because that's your test in life. There were certain things that you did in a previous life that caused you, for whatever reason, to be born in this exact scenario. And that's why you have to deal with your things that you have to deal with, everyone in their own, on their own level, and their own things that they have to deal with. And that's the things that fixes their soul that they messed up in the previous life.
Could this be like a spiritual explanation for why babies cry when they're born? That basically like their soul coming to this world is so fresh that like that they don't want to, you know what I'm saying?
Generally, a soul doesn't want to come down to this world, so that part you're right. As a baby, I don't know. I don't know.
Is there
from the
a
Torah
scientific
source,
explanation why the babies cry? When
it's painful. The birth is painful.
For the baby?
Yeah, they got. What do you mean? You got the size of a watermelon getting squeezed. Well, you whatever. I don't have to explain it. Yeah, I understand, right? It's painful for the mother and it's painful for the baby also. The problem is the baby doesn't remember, huh?
Did anyone ever talk about it?
The Torah?
Spiritual side of it?
Not that I'm aware of. Could be, yeah, but not that I read of anywhere. The general is a baby is the soul doesn't want to come back to this world. Nobody actually wants to be here, right? Because it's so easy to fall, and as everybody knows, I mean, it's very hard. It's very easy to sin, right? It's very hard to do good. So people rather be in the next world. They're like, leave me out. But some people, we have to come back here for a certain reason. Sometimes it's very difficult. Sometimes not only that, it's like you could wait 500 years until the right scenario. You understand that everything has to be exactly. You have to have exactly those parents, exactly those siblings, live exactly in the place that you live, have exactly those. In order for that to come play, God could have been manipulating so much in the world just for you to be born to that family in this time period, in this specific scenario. Yeah, well, yeah, you could say that also. Bishvili nivra olam. Right? For me, everything. God manipulates the whole world just because you have to fix something. You know how kind that what chesed that is? That means that someone messed something up really badly. So instead of punishing and getting upset, what it does is recreate the entire scenario so this time you don't mess up. That's an unbelievable chesed. It's unbelievable. The reincarnation is out of chesed, as opposed to, let's say, for example, hell is more gvura. Ibur is chesed. Kafakela is gvura. Any other questions? Okay, so I don't know, with the nutrition is on here, so we'll go a little more in dreams. The next part, well, we'll speak a little bit about. The next part is where I speak about the difference between real dreams and fake dreams. So we'll start it now, how far we get, and then next week we'll just fill up of where we ended off and recap on this idea. There was actually another interesting story in the Gemara in Tanit, page 24b, where Rava had a court. There's a big rabbi by the name of Rava. He had a court, and the court issued lashes to somebody who had relations with a non-Jew. And the way that lashes work is that they look at the person and they make sure that this person is able to handle a certain amount of lashes, which means they don't just say like, all right, you look like you can handle 40 lashes. And they actually go, they look into it. How is his health? How is everything? And they give him lashes that not that he, God forbid, would die, because that's not the point. The point is the punishment. So something was miscalculated, whatever it was, and they gave the person lashes and he died. And the Persian king was very upset. And so upset that he said that, now he's going to go and he's going to punish the rabbi in charge of the court. And they wanted to punish Rava. So the Persian king's mother said, listen, you don't mess with the Jews. Jews, you don't mess, they got certain power. And he's like, what do you mean certain power? He's like, listen, these people have a connection into the upper worlds. Don't mess with the Jews. So he said, all right, let's see. He calls this rabbi and he says, I hear you have power. I want you to make it rain, right? And again, not make it rain, make it rain from heaven, right? That's what he said, he says, I want to see you make it rain. And back then in the Middle East, in order for it to rain, it rains, if you're living in the Middle East, right? If let's say you're going to Israel, usually you're not going to see rain from Sukkot to Pesach, right? The other way around, sorry. From Pesach to Sukkot, you're not going to see any rain. In the summer there, it doesn't rain. It's not like, you don't see clouds. You see very little clouds. It's always hot. It's always it doesn't rain. So so he says he says, listen, it's the middle of the summer, whatever it was. He says, let me see. You have so much power. Make it rain. So he tells he says, what am I supposed to, how am I supposed to make it rain? So he starts praying. Nothing happens. Then he starts really praying. There's a difference. There are people that, when do they become, they pray, and then somebody, God forbid, gets sick, and then they realize how they could really pray, with the tears and everything comes out. So then he really, that's how you should always pray. You should always pray that you really, really need it, like you really, really need it, right? Those prayers, right? Right? The gates of tears never got locked, right? The prayer, you want a prayer to get answers, tears opens up all the gates. So, Shaldima, the gates of tears. So he started really shaking and it started pouring. The clouds got cloudy and it started pouring. That night he fell asleep, and in his dream his father, I believe, came to him and he says, "Don't sleep over here. The upstairs they're very upset that you troubled the upper world to make it rain." So he gets up and he goes sleep somewhere else. In the morning he looks at his bed and it was like knife marks throughout the entire bed. Right? So there's also one of the things that's very important is not that you learn from this story, but there's a side idea. Don't ask for signs. There are many people who say, "God, show me a sign. I found the right guy. Show me a sign. Let me see. You use this for your signs." Right? So you're not supposed to ask God for signs. That's the general idea. Okay, so we'll finish off over here. And B'ezras Hashem next week we'll start with the difference. How do you tell the difference between real dreams and fake dreams? Right? That's a very, very practical class on different ideas on dreams. Any questions before we finish? Okay. Hazako Baruch.